How much does it cost to start a licensed brand? There's so many hidden costs in this industry that absolutely drain your wallet. The problem, there's barely any information out there. Most people that start end up completely lost because no one's able to actually guide them through the proper structure. If you don't know me, I'm Chris. I've been in wholesale flower since 2004 and held one of California's earliest state distribution licenses. I've also built and sold a licensed cultivation facility that scaled to $3 million before launching Zodix in 2022, which has been in over 100 licensed retail stores. And I followed that up with my second brand, Lowski, in 2024, offering fire indoor at low prices. Today, I teach entrepreneurs how to hit $100,000 months without owning a license. We go over how to scale your licensed brand every day on our free school community, as well as through our one-on-one guidance program for entrepreneurs in this industry. The link for both is in my description. So let's jump into the breakdown of cost for starting a licensed brand versus starting a licensed cultivation facility versus starting a licensed retail store. The reason I want to speak on this is because these are a few of the licenses that people always think they need to get first, is either your cultivation or retail. And in all honesty, these are the worst licenses to start with. And in some cases, almost the worst license to even have, even if you're not starting. So let's jump into option one, licensed cultivation facilities. And I'm gonna break down some rough costs, but doing it on a small scale facility. So this anywhere from say 100, 150 lights, which is still a reasonable size facility, but nowadays, most facilities are upwards of 500 lights into the thousands of lights, and those obviously cost many millions of dollars. So for a small indoor cultivation facility, total estimated startup cost is anywhere from $1.5 million to $3 million. So let's break that down. Your initial application fee is just gonna be a few $1,000s, but your annual license fee is gonna be a minimum of $30,000 to $40,000, and in some cases even higher depending on your revenue. Then the facility build out. For an indoor facility, on the low end, you're gonna spend $500K, but more so in the 1 million to 1.5 million. And as from equipment such as lighting, HVAC, security, that's gonna be anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000. Your staff, your growers, compliance, security, that's gonna be anywhere from another $250,000 to $500,000. Your utilities and operational costs, that's gonna be anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000 annually. And then testing and compliance costs can run anywhere from $50,000 to $100K annually. So some of the advantages of having your own cultivation is you have full control over your cultivation processes and product quality. There's a slight potential for higher profit margins through vertical integration, as well as the ability to develop proprietary strains and products. Some key considerations is that there's a significant capital investment required, along with the ongoing operational costs. Also, it's a lengthy and complex licensing process. There's tons of high regulation and a compliance burden that most people wouldn't even understand or want to understand. There's also heavy exposure to market volatility and price fluctuations. So with that being said, let's break it down like this. Average cost, so for flower, cost of production is anywhere from low end $500 up to $750 per pound. So let's say market price right now is between $600 to $1,200 per pound. $1,200 is low probability. For most grows, they're gonna get about 900 to 1K right now. If your cost to produce is, let's just say 700 instead of 750. 500 is very challenging to hit because to get a $500 cost of production, there's certain variables that need to be in place for that to happen, such as your electric cost, which is fixed. So you have to be located in a region with low electric costs. And in order to do that, here in California, for instance, there's only a few cities that have super low costs. And the trade-off with that, usually these low-cost electrical cities are out in the middle of nowhere, out in the desert, in remote areas. And because of that, your employee pool is much smaller. And a cultivation facility is heavily reliant on quality employees, because that's really what makes the facility go around. So if you're looking to cut your electrical costs, your fixed costs, you're also going to be increasing your potential employment costs, because now you might have to pay a higher amount to get the good talent in there, or potentially have to relocate some of the good employees from, say, a city town out to the remote areas that your grow's at. And this would be, potentially covering their rent, at least covering their relocation costs to get a new spot. And this can be quite expensive. My younger brother, he was running my grow for a while, about 1.5 years, and then he had an opportunity to move out to a grow in the desert and take that place over. And so he did. However, he had to find a new house. He had to deal with the commute, because even though he was living in the desert, there was no places to live out by where the grow was. So he had to find another place about 45 minutes away from the grow, which was still in this remote town, and commute back and forth every day. So if you're a cultivation facility, your only way to drop your cost of production is to lower your electrical costs, lower your fixed costs such as rent and employment, which is, again, these are all 3 costs that you need to have, and you can only get them so low. You can't keep pushing them further down. So your employee costs, your rent, your electrical costs, there's going to be some form of fixed cost there. Other variable costs is going to be your build out, obviously. However, that, like we saw, the range depending on how big your build out, anywhere from 500 to 1.5 million, potentially more. Then you have ongoing maintenance for that. So you're going to have to replace lights, replace light bulbs, replace AC units over time. D-hums are going to go out. You're going to have to replace those. So ongoing costs of just managing these grows, it's way more than, say, even how a restaurant is. A restaurant has a lot of overhead, and it's very hard to become profitable as a restaurant. A cultivation is even harder. You have 6 figures of expenses every single month, and just one bad harvest can throw your entire business into a tailspin. So let's say you caught some mold, some bugs, seeds. All these things can happen in a harvest without you knowing until you're halfway into a harvest, and now all of a sudden that entire room might be decimated. And so what you were expecting to get all your bills out of that room that month and have $250,000 in revenue from that room harvesting could easily be squashed down to $40,000 in revenue, and now you have to figure out how to come up with $200K to cover your bills. So I've had that happen in my facility once. We bought a bunch of clones. They all hermed out about 70% of the room, which means as they started budding, they just started popping out seeds. And once you have seeds in the room, it spreads like wildfire. So we had to cut out all the plants. All of our trays were empty. Basically about 70% of the room was empty. We harvested what we could. I think on that run, we just turned it all into like pre-roll material and stuff, which was literally pennies on the dollar of what we were supposed to get. So now what that does is it causes you to be behind on your bills, behind on the next cycle. Now you're relying on that next room to harvest and finish properly in order to try to catch up. And it's just this tailspin that you go in just from one bad harvest. So now as a brand, let's say you can buy, these are your buy prices, right? So let's say as a brand, you're paying $700 to $900 for a pound, okay? So if it's costing this grower over here $750 to produce the pound, but he's selling it to you for anywhere from $700 to $900, so let's just say $850, right? That means the grower is only making $100. So if you're used to brokering weed at all, if you've sold pounds, middleman pounds before, where you buy it at this price and sell it over here for this price, it's making $100 is a good deal in that situation. You sell 10 pounds, you make $1,000. We'd all love that, right? Even making $50 brokering a deal is acceptable. And there's definitely people that go lower. They'll only take 25 cents or 10 cents off a deal. Well, let's just do the math at $100. You're brokering a deal. You buy 10 pounds over here, you sell them over here for $100 higher. You made $1,000 in profit. You're on your way. You don't have to deal with any bills, no employees, no robberies, no licensing, no nothing. Now that grower literally just grew that pound of weed for $700. That's what their cost was, with employees, with rent, with licensing fees, with compliance, with electric costs, with nutrients. So their all-in cost to produce that pound is $700, but they sold it to you for, what I put down, $850. So they made $150 off that pound. Would you rather just buy pounds from the grow, put $100 on and sell them? Or would you try to nickel and dime, take on all that risk, all that headache, all that responsibility to just make the same price as a broker? It doesn't make sense. Back in the day, when pounds were going for, say, $1,500 to $2,000, and their cost of production was $700 to $800, let's just say $800, you know, they're making $1,200. They're making anywhere from $800 to $1,200 in profit per pound. So think about that. You grow 100 pounds and you're making $1,000 of profit. That's $100,000 in extra profit per month. And that's the old way of growing. That's if you were a grower 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when it made sense. But now we got $800 pounds that's costing you $700 to grow. The grower's only walking away with $100, and they grow 100 pounds, like in that last example, they're only making $10,000 in profit compared to 100K with higher prices. So you see why, as a brand, you can now go, basically you're buying your pounds for like $100 to $200 higher than what the grower paid for them. That is the best deal you could ask for, because if you can get a good grow partnership dialed in, it means you don't have to worry about all the headaches of the growing, all the setbacks, all the responsibility, all the risk, all the equipment upgrades, the facility upgrades, the facility maintenance, the insurance, the compliance, the rent, the robberies, the security guards, inventory tracking, invoicing, metric manifests. So these are just some of the responsibilities as a grower you have to handle. As a brand, you don't have to handle any of those. As a brand, you're just focused on marketing, branding, and sales. And as a brand, you're going out to events, you're going traveling to other countries, other states. You are doing events in retail stores, doing PAD pop-ups. So as a brand, you're boots on the ground, you're handling things, you're enjoying the lifestyle of the brand that it is you're promoting. As a grower, they're stuck in the grow room all week, all month, all day. And we've seen it time and time again. The cultivators that cultivate, they also will put out a brand in some cases. And a lot of times what happens is they can't focus on the grow and the brand the way they need to. So they'll half-ass the brands to stay focused on the grow, because obviously that's the riskier investment there. So they stay focused on the grow and they split their time on the brand, and they don't spend the time they should on the brand. And the brand is really where the profit is made. It's not the grow. But they're so bogged down by the responsibilities that the grow brings that they can't fully focus on the brand, and they're leaving a lot of brand money on the table. And so people put the brand as an afterthought because they think like, oh, it's just a logo and a bag and I just put my weed in it and put it on the shelf. And it's so much more than that. And it's so much more important that people understand that the only way these cultivation facilities moving forward are going to be profitable is the handful of like super mega facilities that have their cost of goods so low because of their economies of scale and all this automation and stuff that they put in there. But that's not every grow. That's very few grows that are like that. Most grows, their cost of production is going to be anywhere from $600 to $800 a pound, and that includes hand trimming. So when it's all said and done, market price equals we'll call it 900 for a good pound of weed, right? Production price, we'll call it 700 with trimming. The reason I specify hand trimming is because its minimum for indoor is going to cost on average about $100 a pound. You might be able to do it in-house and squeeze it down to $60 a pound, but still, count it at $100 a pound to get a good trim job, because if you cut corners on your trimming, it's going to be tougher to sell, and then you're going to lower your sell price just because you try to save some money on the trimming. It's not worth it. So I also know facilities where they're paying $200 per pound to trim, and their cost of production is about $650 pre-trimming. So when it's all said and done, they're paying $850 for a fully produced pound in a turkey bag to sell to the bulk buyers. And they're having trouble right now selling it at $1,000 a pound. And it's really good weed. So when you see that happen, you realize like, yo, this grower is only clearing 100, 150 bucks off this pound. When even as a broker, I could go buy those pounds and then sell them over here to this other guy and make 100 bucks off each pound and not have to take on all that risk. So you see why the big opportunity right now, the biggest opportunity is for brands. Because think about it, brands 2 years ago, they were paying $1,200, $1,500, $1,800 a pound. Now you're paying $600, $700, $800, $900, maybe $1,000 a pound. So your cost of goods went down almost by a magnitude of 10. And when you look at it like that, all that profit margin, even if you drop your eighth prices, your individual wholesale prices to the store, if you drop those down a few bucks, you're still clearing more profit than you would with higher eighth prices at a higher pound price. Plus your risk is way less. So brands, it is such an amazing time right now to put out a brand. It's not even funny. A lot of people have been tainted and jaded by the licensed industry, and they think like, oh, there's no money in licensed cannabis. It's hard to make money. It's huge risk, which it is. It's very hard to make money in this industry. But the reason why is people jumped in and getting the licenses first. They think they need the cultivation license, the retail license, the distribution license, the manufacturing license. And that's not the case at all. If you start with the brand is where the real money is made. And as I get into, I'm gonna break down the retail next, and that's where, again, their real profit margin only comes if they have a house brand. So let's jump into that. Option number 2, licensed retail dispensary. And I'm gonna go through just some rough startup costs. I'm not gonna use a case study of a single store, but just generalized costs here in California. And these are gonna be similar to what you're gonna see in New York too, potentially a little higher in New York. So your estimated startup cost for a retail location, low end is gonna be about 500 grand, high end is gonna be anywhere from 1.5 to $2 million. So your application fee, depending on the state, is gonna be low, potentially a few thousand bucks, whatever. The real cost is your annual license fee, which could be upwards of 6 figures, over 100 grand, and that's based on your projected revenue. And revenue is your total amount of cash collected, not minus expenses. So let's say if your revenue for the month is 250,000, but your expenses are 150,000, that would leave 100,000 in profit. But what the licenses look at is the big number. They don't care about the expenses. They say, okay, if you're producing 250,000 in revenue, this is how much your license is gonna cost. If you're producing 500,000 in revenue, this is how much your license is gonna cost. And that's per month. So the next biggest thing on any license is gonna be your real estate. And a lot of times people may not own the real estate. Most of the times what they're gonna do is set up a commercial lease with a landlord, and this is gonna be your biggest cost and potentially your biggest risk too. I mean, obviously you're risking all the entire startup cost, but with a commercial lease, most of the landlords are gonna require a personal guarantee, which means that you personally have to sign to guarantee every single month of rent for the life of that lease. And most commercial leases are usually set up on a 5-year lease term. You'll very rarely ever see a commercial lease lower than 3 years. So even at a 3-year term, you're talking a long time. And a lot of these rents are going to be $3, $4, $5 a square foot in some situations. It's going to be tough to find it below $3. You might start seeing it creep down to $2.50 right now, but you're going to have to get lucky. It's going to have to be in a good location. You're going to have good landlords. The landlords know that there's only certain zone locations that these cannabis licenses can be set up at in different states. The city defines, like, this neighborhood can have licenses, this neighborhood can't. This neighborhood can, this neighborhood can't. So that's what zoning is. Zoning says, in this zone, you can set up a cannabis license. And so what that does is now the city's basically telling everybody, like, okay, you can only work in this specific area. So that means the landlords that just so happen to own commercial real estate in that zone basically just hit the lottery. Because now, before cannabis, they were probably only renting that facility out for anywhere from 80 cents a square foot to $1.25 a square foot. And now all of a sudden, because they're in the cannabis zone, that just jumped up to now $2 a square foot to $3.50 a square foot. So you see these landlords just double or triple their income automatically because of a local zoning law. So the landlords are truly the ones that are winning, especially off top, because they're getting their at least 3-month deposit on that. So if your rent is say $30K a month, that's what mine was at my facility. And again, it's a small facility for cultivation. So let's say on a retail storefront, your rent's gonna be even higher. That's where you're gonna start getting into $4, $5, $6, $7, even $8 a square foot for a good retail storefront location, because they, even though your square footage is smaller for a retail storefront, it's based on foot traffic. Say if you're on Melrose out in LA, if you're on Santa Monica out in LA, you're gonna have the highest of the highest rent. That's one of the biggest traffic areas, the highest dollar amount. So in some of these high-end locations with really good foot traffic, with clientele walking down those sidewalks that are willing to spend good amounts of money, this is gonna be where you're gonna find your highest rent for a dispensary. So you're gonna be talking anywhere from $6, potentially even upwards close to $10 a square foot if you're really in a prime location and it's a nice retail storefront. So depending on the footprint of that square footage and your square footage price, you're gonna be spending, even on a 6,000 square foot store, let's say, even a 5,000 square foot store, because you gotta figure some room for the back. And let's even go lower. Let's go a 3,000 square foot store times 8. So yeah, you're talking, let's say a 3K square feet store. That includes space in the back, and you can get smaller spots, don't get me wrong, but you need space for storage, you need space for offices, and you also need the floor space for the retail. And these retail stores need to look nice and flashy and fancy and welcoming. They can't just look like trap shops. So in order for these retailers to maintain status quo, they have to spend a lot on their build out. So 3K square feet times, let's just say $8 a square foot, you're talking 24K a month in rent. Then you have what's called triple net, AKA CAMs. So this is basically where you're paying property taxes, any sort of maintenance, as well as any other additional costs that the landlord would incur. So as a commercial landlord, they are responsible for nothing. So you know how when you rent your apartment, if something breaks, if the pipe breaks, and your kitchen sink starts leaking, you call the landlord right away. He sends over a plumber, the plumber fixes it, the plumber invoices the landlord pays for it, and you don't have to come out of pocket for nothing. You just pay your rent. That's residential. In commercial, once you sign that lease, that property is yours. You're responsible for taxes, you're responsible for maintenance, you're responsible for build out. You need a new floor, there's holes in the floor, let's say. Landlord says, I don't care, fuck you. You fix it. Something falls down in the back, your wall breaks, anything like that, you fix it, you pay for it. The landlord is not on the hook for a single thing. Once you sign that lease, you do your walkthrough, you say, okay, this is what I'm leasing. He's not responsible for anything other than the roof. The roof, if something happens to that, he's most likely gonna cover that. However, there's also situations where you might be responsible for that roof too. So a commercial business lease is nothing like a residential property lease, and you can't think of them the same, and you're in the big leagues. And so back to the $24,000 a month. So let's say you got to pay $24,000 a month and they want a 5-year lease. So you're talking $1.4 million, $1,440,000 just in rent for that 5-year period. So whether that store opens up, whether you do any business whatsoever, let's say you start as a retail dispensary and then all of a sudden you can't make it work and you have to go start selling, I don't know, gumballs and candy or some shit. Doesn't matter. You sign that lease for 5 years, you're on the hook. They don't care whether you sell nothing out of there. They don't care if you even open up. You have to pay that landlord $1.44 million now. Doesn't matter what you do with that storefront. So you got to be careful when signing commercial leases, because that personal guarantee can literally demolish you as a person for almost the rest of your life. Think about that. If that business went bad, you had some investors, some partners, whatever, but you signed the personal guarantee and then they abandon you and they leave. The business crumbles. Doesn't matter. You're on the hook for that $1.44 million, whether that business does anything or not. So that's where this is the same scenario with a grow, same with a cultivation facility, except it's probably more because you have bigger square footage. Granted, the square foot cost might be a little less, but you're gonna be on the hook for a personal guarantee of millions of dollars for a cultivation facility too. Okay, so let's jump into build out and renovations. Like I said, the store needs to be nice. You've all been in dispensaries, or at least seen what a California or Michigan dispensary or New York dispensary looks like. And you see a lot of these dispensaries make it look nice inside. They make you you walk into an experience. So you have to kind of maintain that status quo. There's definitely stores that cut the corners and they don't put a lot into their build out or making it look flashy or whatever. I'm not saying that that takes away from their sales, but it definitely can. And more so the repeat customers. So when customers come in and they feel like they're in a trap shop, they might not come back as willingly next time. They might want to try that nicer shop down the street that's selling the same ace for the same prices. So your build out and renovations is going to run you anywhere from 100 to 300,000 and potentially more. So the next big thing is inventory. And as any retail, you could be selling Nikes, you could be Foot Locker selling Nikes, it doesn't matter. Any retail store, that one of their biggest expenses aside from employees is going to be inventory. And the reason why, have you ever been into a store ready to go spend money? You want that new pair of Jordans, or you want this new pair of Yeezys, or whatever it is you're going into the shoe store for, and they don't have it. They're sold out, or they don't even stock it. And what that does is now you're a paying customer that walked in there willing to spend that money, but they don't have the product that you specifically want. So now you walk out of that store with your money. You're not leaving the money there. So the point is, as a retailer, your whole strategy is to make sure that your inventory reflects a good offering that your customers and clientele walking into that store is gonna wanna buy. And so with any store, whether it's a liquor store, shoe store, clothing store, even food, you need to have selections for everybody up there. So even though if you might be selling a lot on these SKUs over here, you still need to stock some of these other SKUs, even if they're not a big seller, because you need to attract those clients for those SKUs too. Or people coming in maybe to buy flour, they also want some edibles too. They also want some carts. So you can't just be like, oh, we just sell flour, because now you're missing out on a whole section of sales that retail location could be providing. And that's the whole trick to this game, is you want to maximize your sales compared to your costs. So the only way to do that as a good retailer, you need to have good product offerings. And in order to have good product offerings, you need to pay for that inventory. So inventory on any store is going to be anywhere from 150 to 500,000 to really do it good. And I was just talking to my friend who owns a licensed delivery service. They're the second biggest delivery service here in California, in Southern California, in LA. and they do about $700,000 a month in sales. And so out of that, he's only got about 200, 300 worth of inventory. He said if he doubled his inventory, he could double his sales. So if he had about 600,000 worth of inventory, he could be pushing closer to 1.3, $1.4 million in sales each month. And the reason why is because now you're broadening your inventory offerings, and now you can service more customers that now want to come in for these other SKUs. So truly your inventory is going to be a huge linchpin to the success of your business. And it's a double-edged sword, because in order for it to be successful, you need to drop that money, that 300, 400, 500, 600,000 in my friend's case, to get that inventory up to a level that can equate to 1.4 million in sales, let's say. So inventory is going to be your biggest trick. Then staffing, bud tenders, management, security, marketing, inventory specialist, compliance manager for your metric. You're going to be spending over $250,000 annually just on your staffing costs. So work that backwards. We're talking over 20 grand a month, plus your rent, over 20 grand a month, plus your inventory, plus your marketing. And that's the next thing to get into. 50,000 to 100,000 can definitely be spent per month on marketing for a retail store. And this is if you're running Weedmaps ads. So even with a delivery service, you could be spending upwards of 30, 50, 60, $70,000 a month just running ads on Weedmaps. And it's very profitable in a sense. It's more profitable for Weedmaps, obviously. But for the store, you need to be running these ads in order to compete with your competitors. Otherwise, it's the same as if you're doing drop shipping or Amazon shipping or whatever it is. If your competitors are all spending this much on ads and you're trying to skip running ads whatsoever, you can't even compete. It's like trying to play NBA basketball, but you're not trying to do all the exercises and the practices every day that it's required. And you're just gonna show up for the games. And it's like, you're not gonna win that way. So the same with marketing and advertising. And I feel like a lot of companies, whether it be brands, retailers, even outside of the cannabis industry, even just whether it be restaurants or whatever the business may be, I feel like a lot of people look at marketing as their first thing that they can cut, when really it should be the first thing to increase, because the more you spend on marketing, the more revenue that's going to bring in. And the way I like to look at things is having my marketing spend be a percentage of revenue. And what that does, it creates a flywheel. So let's say if your revenue coming in is 100,000 cash collected for the month, and you're willing to spend 15% of your top line revenue on marketing spend. So that means you brought in 100K per month, you're spending 15% of that, that's 15,000 to go back into marketing spend. Now let's say you're spending that 15,000, and now that marketing is gonna bump up your top line revenue. So now let's say that next month, that marketing spend allowed you to spend, or allowed you to bring in 120,000 in revenue. So now 120,000, 15% of that is gonna be 18,000. So we just bumped it from 15 to 18,000. So we increased ad spend by $3,000 that next month. So like I said, we're gonna see a direct correlation. By spending that extra 3,000 on top of the initial 15, now we're spending 18. It's gonna bring in more top line revenue next month. Now you're getting more top line revenue in. Instead of 120, let's say you're bringing in 140 now. So 15% of that is now gonna be 14,000 plus 7. Now you're gonna be like what, 21, 22,000. So now each month as you bump up your revenue, you're bumping up your marketing spend, which then bumps up your revenue more, which then bumps up your marketing spend, which then bumps up your revenue more. So obviously there's gonna be a saturation point to this, but my point is, cutting corners on marketing spend is fucking stupid. I don't know why anyone would do it until you hit your saturation point, or you hit ad fatigue, or you hit low return on ad spend. It's a no-brainer. And you want to keep scaling that until you hit that saturation point. Okay, so next piece for the retail is your security systems and compliance. Compliance needs to be a full-time position. You at least need one person handling your compliance full time. So let's say that's $50,000 a year off top. Next is your security. Your security is easily, if you're doing 24-hour security, in-person armed security, if it's 24 hours, you're for sure spending over 100 grand. And as retail stores here in California, there's a lot of stores that do 24-hour security. I know if you drive past the Artistry on Santa Monica at any hour of the night, there's a security guard sitting right there in the front through the glass doors. You can see him. And I always think about, I'm like, who'd be stupid enough to rob that store? It's like right in plain sight, police station right down the street, fire department right down the street. It just seems like a store that wouldn't get robbed, but yet they still have 24-hour security sitting inside of it. So they're spending well over 100,000 a year just on that one security guard is sitting there. Because security guards come from security companies that are licensed, bonded, and insured. To have an armed security guard, it's not as simple as like, oh, I'm just gonna go get my security card and just post up at this store. No, I tried doing that with my licensed grow, is have a friend of mine who's in the military get his guard card to just post up with a gun at our grow, and it was illegal. The reason why, if you were to shoot that gun, even if someone came in and robbed and shot that robber, we'd be on the hook for the insurance because we're not a licensed, insured, bonded security company. So in order to do that, you have to become one. And in order to do that, all the compliance, insurance, licensing, bonding, all that stuff to just have an armed security company is a whole nother business in itself. So the point is, if you want armed security, you're gonna be spending over 100 grand a year on that cost. If they're overnight, it's gonna go above 100 grand. If they're only there during store hours, you can potentially squeeze it a little bit under 100 grand. But that's a high expense to spend on security guards, and they're necessary in this industry. So right there, you're talking 100K for the security guard, 50K for compliance. It's another 150K right there for those two things. So in the end, with no guarantee of profit, you're gonna be spending anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million, especially if you don't skimp on inventory costs, which again, you need that inventory to actually be profitable. You also need the marketing spend in order to be profitable. So it's really just like, yo, do you wanna start up at low cost as possible? Okay, you're gonna be cutting your corners on inventory and marketing. But you cut those two corners, now you're cutting your revenue down. So it's like, why be cheap about it when not being cheap about it is gonna increase your bottom line? And I'm not saying to spend frivolously, I'm saying to not be cheap. And there's two different things. Not being cheap is not wanting to spend things just because that number scares you. You're like, fuck, I gotta spend another 20 grand. Fuck, we don't even need that, fuck it. Versus, yo, let's get this cool thing for the lobby. It costs 20 grand, but it's gonna look dope in there. It's not gonna help increase sales. You're better off spending that 20 grand on inventory or on marketing rather than getting some fucking cool piece of art for when people walk in through your front door. So that's where I say is don't spend frivolously, but don't cut corners either to lower your costs. Otherwise, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, so I went over enough of the downsides of a retail. Let's talk a little bit about the advantages real quick. Obviously, you're getting direct access to the consumers and you have control over the retail experience. You also get a higher brand visibility and customer engagement opportunities because as the retailer, you can train your bud tenders. If you're the floor manager, you can go talk with your customers. More so, you have access to all that customer data. You can see buying patterns. You can see what products are selling the most in that area. You can have a connection to your customers. They're leaving their email address, their phone number in your loyalty systems. So you have all this data that is super, super valuable. And as a retailer, especially if you own multiple locations, now you can blend this data. You can see which areas are good for selling pre-rolls, which one's selling the most flower, which one is selling cheap stuff, which one's selling high stuff, and start understanding these different variables. Because also with a retail store, it's highly, highly dependent on where it's located. If you're located in one neighborhood versus another neighborhood, it could be the totally difference between you being able to sell hash holes or you being able to sell cheap ounces. And maybe at that store that's selling a bunch of cheap ounces, they're not selling a lot of hash holes. And maybe at that store that's selling a bunch of hash holes, they're also selling other high ticket items that consumers don't care the difference between if they save 10 bucks here, 20 bucks here, because it's disposable income for them anyway. But at the store where people are concerned about how much weed can they get for as cheap as possible, they're probably not going to be splurging on 2.5 gram hash holes for $60, $70, $80. You know, instead they're rather spending that $80 to buy 2 cheap ounces of outdoor. So there's also another advantage to having a store is you have potential for diversified revenue streams. And I say diversified revenue streams because you can have events there. Some stores are having smoking lounges now. Here in California, they're allowing you to sell other products such as clothing, food, coffee, pastries, things like that. So they're allowing these retailers to become more like a coffee shop environment or a smoke shop environment, where what Europe's used to, where people can come in, buy their products at the retail dispensary, then go upstairs or next door to their smoking lounge and have a social interaction. So some of the considerations with a retail store is a high initial investment and ongoing operational costs, intense competition and market saturation in certain areas, complex regulatory environment with strict compliance requirements, as well as potential delays in licensing and permitting processes. And this includes reapplying. Each year you have to get your license renewed, and you're gonna have inspections to do every year, also pop-up inspections from Metric, your track and trace situation. And these are all things that people don't think about, but it's all part of the process. If you like this content so far, be sure to join the free school community. The link is in my IG bio. And there we put out free PDFs that break down a lot of these concepts step by step, very in-depth. I'm not holding anything back. And then from there, be sure to check out my YouTube. There's a lot of great videos out there and a lot of content step by step on how to do this. And I really want to empower others to get their brands started, scaled up, so we can all collectively as independent brands take away market share from the corporate brands. So I'll see you at the top. Thanks for supporting my content, and I wish you the best with your brand. Okay, option 3 is to start a cannabis brand only, no license required. Now the total estimated startup cost on this liberally is anywhere from say $25,000 to about $50,000, and that's it. Okay, so we're talking orders of magnitude less. So to start up an independent brand with owning no licenses, like I said, $25,000 to $50,000 is a reasonable startup cost to roll that out. And compare that to the startup cost estimates on a retail, like I said, anywhere from 500 to 1.5 million. On a cultivation facility, same thing, you're talking $1 million to $1.5 million. Whereas a brand only, 50K, it's like nothing. It makes that 50K look like nothing, honestly. Would you rather spend 50K or 1.5 million? Exactly. And I wait till the end, because the real cold part, when I break down these profits, your mind's gonna be blown, and you're gonna just be like, why the fuck would anyone else want to do a license? And I'll tell you why. It's important to have a license, but at the right time. Okay, so some of the costs for a brand startup without owning a license. Your flower inventory. You're gonna keep your initial costs low, because as you roll out your brand, you don't want to put out too much flower, because you want to get those sell-throughs happening. And so that's going to be your biggest obstacle, is the initial launch. You have to get your products into stores on shelves, and then sell them off the shelves, and then get that store to reorder. And that's what I look at as a successful sales cycle. It's when you get into the store the first time, that's just the beginning. Now you have to get sold out of that store, and then make sure that store reorders. And that's a full sales cycle to me. So your flower inventory, put that close to about $10,000. And this is gonna give you enough money for 2 re-ups. So basically, let's say about 5K for your first order, and then 5K for your second order. And this is inflated numbers too, because right now I could get some really nice pounds for say $1,000 bucks, do 2 pounds of 2 SKUs, that's 4 pounds, that's $4,000. You see, so I'm overestimating a little bit. So let's say $1,200 pounds, you're gonna spend about $5,000 for your first drop. And I'd only recommend doing about 2 to 3 different SKUs. Each SKU is a strain, so 2 to 3 different strains per drop, especially in the beginning. Really just only do 2 if you can. And then from there, you wanna make sure you have money put aside to get your second reorder started through the pipeline. You wanna be able to buy that flower, start getting it packaged and tested. Obviously, after you get your first one in, but you also wanna have this process started while your stuff's being sold off the shelf from your first order. That way, as soon as it's sold out, you have fresh stuff to fill those reorders with. Okay, so flower, we're gonna put it 10K, and that's for 2 orders. Next is your packaging. So let's just say on a low end, give or take, some of these packaging manufacturers will let you do lower MOQs, but we're gonna just do the math at 3,000 pieces per bag. So let's say that you're doing one single bag design and you're just doing different strain stickers. That's gonna be your cheapest way to get multiple strains to market without having to do separate packages. So by doing that, let's just account at 60 cents. It's, again, that's on the high end of your cost per unit. And 3,000 units, it's gonna be about $1,800 just to get your Mylar bags. Now your labor for initial packaging. So 518 units, I'm doing the math on, that's about 2 pounds that's about 4 pounds. And that's accounting for your first batch and your second batch. So that's gonna be about $466 for your labor to put the nugs into the bag, to weigh them out, put them in the bag. And then testing for 2 strains, it's gonna be about $420 per strain. So for your first batch, it's gonna be $840, and your second batch will be $840. Then your professional branding, your website, a real brand build out, not just a logo and packaging and an IG. Too many people do that, and that's why you see all these brands come out, but then nothing happened with them because they didn't build out their brand properly. In order to build out your brand properly, there's an entire blueprint to doing this. And I tell people all the time, it's the difference between if you were to build a house and have proper blueprints made and follow all the rules and regulations and inspections and permits and all this stuff, you know that by the time that house is done being built, it's gonna be sturdy, it's gonna be built to code, it's not gonna burn down, the roof's not gonna leak. And yeah, there might be anomalies or whatever, outliers, but let's just say on average, you build a house up to code with the proper plans, proper inspections, proper engineering, all this stuff, that house is gonna be a winner in the end. It's gonna work perfect. People are gonna live in it for decades and decades and decades after with just minimal maintenance. Same with a brand build out. If you just try to half-ass a brand build out and just whip up a logo by the cheapest graphic designer that you can find, have them also whip up some packaging designs, maybe do some 3D art or some AI art, and just keep it as cheap as possible, you're not gonna have success. It would be the equivalent of going to Home Depot, picking up a bunch of 2x4s and nails and bringing them home one weekend. You and your buddy are sipping some beers and just nailing together 2x4s and saying, oh yeah, we're gonna build a house. How do you think that house is gonna come out versus a professionally designed, built, engineered, inspected house versus some, half-ass built, on the fly, half drunk built house, So it's the same as building a brand. You wanna have that proper brand build out. There's a lot of elements that go into this, everything from your brand heritage to unique value proposition, your brand voice, vision, guidelines, and there's multiple other points to this. This is what my guidance course really dials in and breaks down for you guys, is how to go through each one of these steps properly, build it out properly, and build it out for your demographic so it speaks directly to your demographic and makes them feel an emotion. And that's what triggers buying. Emotional connection is what makes people buy. It's not logic. So when people try to lead with logical things like, hey, my thing is $2 cheaper, so logically you should want to buy this rather than the next one. That's not why they're buying. They're buying because what that product or what that brand makes them feel emotionally and how they can embody that. And so that's the true trick to it. When people try to sell on features and benefits and they say, hey, my weed's indoor, my weed tested this high, I have this much terpene content in it, our THC percentage is over 30%. Those are features. You're selling features. What you really want to sell is the outcome. So the outcome of that would be, do you like the tastiest flower ever? Do you prefer taste over being high? Because if taste is what you're after, that effect, that mouth coating effect where you taste it and you keep tasting it for 10 minutes after you smoke. Have you ever had weed that tastes like that? That's what our weed does. And so when you can embody this emotional thing and you're like, wow, I can remember when I smoked this really good weed and I kept tasting it even after the joint was done. And it was just a great night I had, you know? And so it's like you're transporting now to that feeling, that emotion, that experience. And it's not just saying, hey, I have 3% terpenes in my weed. That means nothing to people. But when you say, hey, do you want to have one of the greatest nights where when you pull out this joint and smoke it with your friends, they're going to ask you, wow, bro, where did you get this? I never tasted weed like this. And that's the emotion, that feeling that you get when your friends are impressed by what you bring to the table. So sell on emotion and outcome, don't sell on features and benefits. So packaging. So let's get back to these prices. So packaging, let's say is going to be $1,800 up front. That's for 3,000 bags. Out of 3,000 bags, divided by 128 per pound, that equals about 23 pounds worth. So basically $1,800 will get you enough packaging for about 23 pounds. So that's just on the low end. You know, you might want to change up your packaging in the future. If you're going to be using the same packaging time after time after time again, I'd recommend getting more like 50,000, 100,000 pieces, because then your cost of production is going to go so low that if you're going to be using them over that period of time, you might as well. Okay, so packaging. Labor for packaging. That's packing your weed. That's going to be about, we'll just call it 500 for 4 pounds. Then testing, 840 for 4 pounds. Professional branding, we'll put that down at 20K. That's what it really costs, 20 to 30K. Marketing materials, we'll put that at a $2,000 startup cost. And then business setup. So this is your LLC, website stuff, such as like your domain cost for each month, your security software for the website, things like that. It's small in retrospect, but we'll figure that at about $1,000. So all in all, as a brand startup, I would target anywhere from 25K to 50K to start up as a brand. And that's minimum 2 runs of product. And yeah, so let's run through this real quick. You got cultivation equals 1 to 1.5 million. Retail. So the main benefits and advantages of doing a brand only is there's no need for state or local cannabis licenses. There's lower upfront capital requirements. It's a much, much faster time to market. There's a lot of flexibility to pivot and scale without regulatory hurdles. So some of the considerations as a brand only, potentially some cons if some people were to look at it, would be you're depending on licensed partners for production and distribution. You also may have limited control over the supply chain. And there's also going to be potential challenges in building brand recognition without that physical storefront. But that's a small drop in the bucket, because as far as brand recognition in storefronts go, the one who pulled this off the most was Cookies, Jungle Boys, and honestly, not too many others, to where they have a successful brand independently, but then they take that same brand and put it on top of retail stores. And a lot of people think that this is the way to do it because they saw Cookies do that, but it's not. In fact, it's almost a trickier way to do it, because now you have to build this brand's persona around the cannabis brand as well as the retail store. And they're two completely different businesses and potentially completely different demographics. So now it's like a convoluted process to try to get this clear, concise messaging and brand awareness to that proper demographic, as well as this local retail storefront marketing and branding, which is a whole different type of marketing and branding, because now you're only marketing to this local area to try to get foot traffic in there. you're juggling these two different things. So you don't need the storefront for actual brand awareness, although some people think that. Okay, so to wrap it up, the biggest takeaway from here is in order to truly be a profitable retailer or to truly be a profitable cultivation specialist, a cultivation facility, you need to have a house brand. And so it's truly the brands that make the money. And so as a cultivator, you're just a commodity producer. You're just producing flower at a commodity at the market price. The market sets the price, the producer doesn't set the price. It's the definition of a commodity. So if you want to be a commodity grower, just like the same way farmers grow corn, they grow potatoes, they raise cattle, whatever, that's what you're doing if you just choose to be a cultivator. You're going to produce commodities, the market's going to set the price, there's going to be no brand value. Now, if you're a cultivator and you want to increase your bottom line, what would happen is you would start a brand, you'd put your flower in that brand, and you'd sell that brand through the retail network to the consumers. And so this is how, as a cultivator, you can increase your profits and actually command certain prices rather than just selling at market price as a commodity producer. Now, if you're a retailer, same thing. Like I said, all the production, all the startup costs, all the operational costs, you're lucky if you break even as a retailer. A lot of retailers are in the negative. The only way to come up out of that negative or to actually break some profit is to have a house brand and to sell it to your consumers. So when you strip away the cultivation, when you strip away the retail, what is the common denominator across all? It's the brand. The brand is where the profit is made. So as an independent brand, you're doing yourself a huge, huge, huge disservice by trying to get the retail or the cultivation facility first. It is not needed, and it's a sure way to go bankrupt before you actually make profit. So my strategy that I like to focus on, and I've been through this, I haven't owned a retail store, but I've owned a cultivation facility, distro license, manufacturing license, and none of them are nearly as profitable as the brand. However, the brand needs to be ran through all these licenses, and it does make sense at a certain point. Once your brand is profitable, successful, well-known, having reorders, then it makes sense to start looking into buying up licenses, to buy your supply chain up, buy a cultivation facility or invest into one, partner into one, buy the manufacturing, open one up, do your own manufacturing, packaging, do your own distribution. These are all great ways to lower the cost of getting your brand to market. But at first, you don't need to absorb all these. Get your brand to market profitably, pay these fees to outsource your manufacturing, outsource your distro, and get your brand out there, get it profitable. And then as it starts becoming more and more profitable, now invest in a cultivation facility, ideally one that also has a manufacturing and distro license. So now you can start covering all those bases under one facility and start taking all that supply chain stuff in-house. Granted, you're gonna have other costs now to shell out in order to do all this in-house, but that's part of your growth strategy, of your scaling strategy. So take this into account, understand that regardless of what license you hold, the only way to be profitable is with a brand. So why are you gonna go set yourself many steps back by trying to get the license first? Now you're gonna have this far catch-up period to even become profitable, which is a small chance of even happening once you get your license open. Or start the brand first, get the brand going, make profit, prove your proof of concept, have product market fit, make any pivots you need to make. Maybe this product isn't selling too good, so you're gonna pivot to this product, or maybe your 1 gram pre-rolls aren't selling good, but you do them as half grams and pack them in a 5-pack and they fly off the shelf. So figure all that stuff out as a brand, dial in your product market fit, your flagship products, your profit margins, your economies of scale, and then get into owning licenses. And that's the smartest way.